Now, the wide receiver position in camp, you mentioned Destin Hill. Anything else going on there, and what's real and what's being overplayed and overhyped?
Yeah, look, wide receiver is probably the biggest question mark on this team due to the fact of the year you had from Keon Coleman, the year you had from Johnny Wilson. Giant years. I get it. The offense revolves around him. You had a senior quarterback and Jordan Travis coming back that it was, really locked in. When the first game started last year against LSU, you were at full power. You had so many guys, some transfers, whatever the case may be, some high school. You were really senior led, but you had a bunch of guys who were ready to go. You were the best you could possibly be. You could have practiced as much as you wanted for another 2 months. You weren't going to get too much better. You just had a bunch of guys who were at their peak physique and ready to go. By the end of the year, you had injuries. Obviously you lose Jordan Travis. You were a bit beat up. This is not that. This is a totally different year. This is a lot more like 2022, and the fact that you don't really have those jersey names. You don't have the wide receiver that's coming back with a bunch of production. So people are really nervous. Who is going to step up? Who is going to step up? Well, the word coming out of camp has not been reassuring for folks out there. It hasn't been the best for the wide receivers. And again, these wide receivers are going up against possibly the best defensive back unit in the entire nation. I would bet anything they'll be top 5, but they have a real shot to, be the best in the nation. So it's going to be tough. Nothing is easy. They look pretty good when you're seeing stuff against air and things of that nature. But for instance, in the practice today, supposedly there was a stretch of 13 incompletions against the defense. There's really no way to cut that other than that was a tough day for the wide receivers at practice. But guys, you've got a bunch of young talent in there. You're the most talented you've ever been in Mike Norvell's career. But guys are going to have to grow up. I think the Keon Coleman is the ultimate X factor in this because it blinds a lot of things. I think people forget, if you go back to last year, Keon Coleman was a late transfer addition. We didn't get him till the summer. Right now is when we found out about him. But before Keon Coleman got here, we were talking about Darion Williamson and Kentron Portier potentially starting for us. Okay, Micah Pittman transferred. We did not have a ton of stuff going. Johnny Wilson, could have been, the A1 number 1, and we could have found out with some of these younger guys. Hakeem Williams could have been kind of fed to the wolves, put out there, forced to kind of evolve. But, that didn't happen. Keon Coleman ended up being great. Luckily for this team, they don't start out against LSU and then have another 2 or 3 ranked teams in the first month. You don't have that gauntlet where Clemson is your 4th game of the year. So what they have is time to get this thing together. Don't overreact to any specific practice report, anything of that nature. They get Georgia Tech, Boston College, SMU on down the line. The first 4, 5, 6 games of the schedule are manageable. They're going to be able to get better and better and better. The offense isn't going to call for a bunch of these passes over the middle and things, or whatever the case may be, that they really struggled with in practice today. They're going to get guys in good situations, hit some play action matchups, scheme guys to get open. But unfortunately for the offense, the Florida State defense has already seen all that stuff. They know all the tricks that are in the bag. Mike Norvell can mix them and match them and do things of that nature. But as they continue to install things, the defensive backs, they had a dominant day. But the offense has got their share of wins. Later on in practice, when it got into more situational stuff and 11 on 11, everybody I've talked to or listened to has said, yeah, they made some big plays. Morlock's out there making plays. Jalen Brown's making plays. A lot of these young pass catchers are making plays. So guys, don't worry about the wide receivers. We're going to be all right. It's not going to be the end of the world. There is a ton of talent there. We just got to find out who it's going to be. Somebody's going to have to make that name for themselves in 2024, and it'll happen. If I had to guess, it's long been Malik Benson and Hakeem Williams as kind of the top 2 guys to hopefully win those outside spots. Malik Benson is the one guy, Like, he's not making the drops. He's making the catches. He's the one guy that appears to have that polish and really is kind of ready. You want him to stay healthy and continue getting better in this offense, but he will be the clear-cut number one, I believe, starting the season. He kind of sets himself apart in that room. But besides him, you look out at Hakeem Williams that I mentioned. He's got an opportunity to be great. 6'3", gigantic. Elijah Moore has been the guy that everybody has been talking about. Just freak, making plays in double coverage, mossing people. Of all the drops and all the issues on the team, outside of Malik Benson, he's probably catching it better than anybody, which is pretty amazing as a true freshman to come in and be doing that. He has his moments. He's still got to learn, but an amazing talent. Jaylen Brown is right there along the same athleticism as Hakeem Williams. It's just his first year in the offense. So I imagine maybe you see something from him later on. But what Mike Norvell is going to be able to do is use this deep core, whatever it is, 6, 7, 8 wide receivers that all have the potential, and just not the proof. They got the potential, not the proof. He's got so many of these guys that within the offense, he's going to be able to figure out what Jaylen Brown does really, really well, and he's going to be able to attack that. He's going to be able to use them for outs or whatever the game calls for. So really excited. I'm trying to think who I haven't talked about the slot. Who's going to do in the slot? We got Ja'Kai Douglas coming back in the slot, who is just, he's kind of another steadying pressure presence there alongside Malik Benson. He's going to be a lot of fun, but not a guy that's going to carry, offense. Not a, go up and win in man coverage guy. He's a guy that is going to make plays on swing passes, matchups and things of that nature. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Darion Williamson, Kentron Portier, both those guys are back. You've got other freshman wide receivers. LaWayne McCoy has stepped up and made some real good plays. Tight end has been one of the brightest spots of camp. Amari Williams, again, a true freshman, one of the guys that's been catching the ball better than anybody on the team. Doesn't have as many of those drops. Apparently, Morlock, who I was bragging on early in camp, is having a bit of issues on those. Some of those drops for him over the middle. I keep talking about how good these DBs are, but when you're about to get smacked in the face, even if it's practice and the guy's not going to give you a concussion, when you have, a 6'2", 200-pound safety coming at your head, you might look up, and that's a little bit of what's going on, a little bit where those drops are coming over the middle of the field, and it'll get cleaned up, and things will be different. You won't have guys necessarily sitting on all these plays when you go line up against Georgia Tech or whoever. You're going to have some stuff that's schemed up. So yeah, if you have any more questions, I know I kind of wandered all over the place. I want people to know that there's plenty of talent there. There's more talent than there has been in Norvell's entire tenure. Don't get too caught up in Keon Coleman coming in, being amazing, and then leaving out. Kind of look at the whole room. You can literally go look at position previews from the spring of 2023 before Keon Coleman was here. Look at that, and then look at where our wide receiver room is, compared to that. And I think you'd be really happy. I actually listened to my spring preview, or post-spring review, whatever it is, before you got here, and I was blown away. You really wouldn't believe how much they've added. For as top 100 players, blue chip players across the board, there's a ton of talent. Just trust Mike Norvell and what he's been able to do every single year. We haven't talked about running backs, but I imagine running backs, the percentage of the offense, percentage of the passes they catch will dramatically increase. It could be somewhere up 40, 50%. Who knows? When you look at Jalen Lucas, Lawrence Toafili, Micah Hyde-Danzy coming in, you have a wealth of talent at that tailback position in this offense. And we all know what the running backs are going to do with, Roydell Williams, Keziah Holmes, Cam Davis, Sam Singleton. Sam Singleton has had a couple really great days. Listening to James, he might have been the best back out there at all of practice today. Not to say he's the best back on the team, but, today he was the best back out there in Jacksonville practicing. A redshirt freshman that gets lost in the shuffle quite a bit in a very talented backfield. But a guy who's leans a little bit more built like Toafili, but maybe he can hold a little bit more weight. But he can really do some things, and he can run hard. He can run with a little bit more intention than Toafili did at his age. He had Adam Fuller like really upset. He broke like 4 or 5 tackles a couple practices ago. Maybe it was a scrimmage. Broke 4 or 5 tackles for a big touchdown run. So really, really, really excited to see those guys and also get caught in the passing game. Every practice, you see a lot of those swing passes out of the backfield and those wide receiver screens from the right hash all the way out to the other sideline, and certainly will be a big part of the offense. And DJU does that effort.
Good stuff, George. Appreciate the rundown at the wide receiver position. I gave it a very simple take this way when we did our breakdown with Logan Robinson. We've got it right here on the channel, folks. Is that so? There wasn't anybody that we ran through that I didn't remember being recruited and what the scouting report was and all of that, of being highly sought after, highly touted, and unless you have extremely bad luck and poor development and all those things, which is not the case here, do you take like 8 guys that are that gifted, that talented, and you strike out on all of them? Like, you should be able to find 3. You pretty much need 3, as long as they stay healthy, 3 guys, and you should be good to go.
Oh yeah, and they're talented.
Yep.
Talented.
And then the other guys may take a year or 2, or may never turn out. Maybe 1 or 2 never turn out, but they've got about 7 or 8 guys. So they need 3.
Yeah, people forget, when Johnny Wilson got here, he had 200 something yards. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a chicken or egg thing. You've always got to have it. You're not always going to return all your top receivers and things. You're going to have to replace them. It leaves you with anxiety. It makes you anxious. But that's what we love about college football. The teams change every single year, but you got to trust what your coach is doing and who he brings in. Deuce Spann is a guy I didn't mention. He's a guy that came in that same class with Birdman, Trey Benson, all them guys. Trey Benson, when he got here, how many yards did he have rushing? He had like 6 carries in all of college football when he got here. And this isn't 4 or 5 years ago we're talking about. The guy got here year before last. Like, they're all in the NFL now. They're balling out for, whether it be the Cardinals or the Eagles or whatever the case may be. Kalen Loach at linebacker doesn't get picked up. He's running with the first team at Tampa Bay. He's on the depth chart. The guy's in the top 30, 40 players on an NFL squad as an undrafted free agent. Isn't that nuts? How crazy is that? Beautiful stuff. I think the faith and the development, the scouting, the game planning, everything that's encompassed in this program of Mike Norvell's, it's one of those things that they're just going to have to see it over an amount of years. But those of us that have been watching with a fine-tooth comb, checking the hit rates, checking things of that nature, the people that have predicted it, now that you're seeing it, I believe I think Adam Fuller came out and flat out said it, or maybe it was Alex Atkins, like, we're going to have another 10 guys drafted this year. Florida State, Mike Norvell is going to make a run at that 3-year draft record with this squad and the way they do things. It's not a 4-year turnover of league. People are so used to, when you lose Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, that means, okay, we're in trouble because, it's all youth, young. Yeah, we have young guys, but we have a mix. We have guys that are ready to take that next step. And through the transfer portal, and I'll continue to say, the thing that nobody really talks about is the exits. The exits are every bit as important as the entries. You lose a guy what's his name, Dre Jacobs, and you lose Goldie Lawrence. I like the guys. I hope they, would have worked out here, but it didn't happen. But who do you get in response? You get Jaylen Brown. You get Jalen Lucas. You get guys that, take you to the next level and are a little bit closer to ready to compete. And they do it across the board. I mean, I don't know how many defensive linemen you have to see us grab to believe that they know what they're doing. Whatever they've grabbed, whether it's 10 or 11 guys, their hit rates through the roof, 80 some odd percent. You get to the NFL and you're off conference, all these things, like, it's unreal. So, you watch them bring in 4 guys and I don't know what you're worried about. That's another word out of practice. That defensive line is really starting to come along. I mentioned Marvin Jones Jr. out of that no contact jersey. I forget who it is. Somebody did a list with their kind of freaks of the year, top 25 freaks of the year, something like that. Both of our interior defensive tackles made that list. Joshua Farmer and Daryl Jackson, and Marvin Jones Jr. is starting to look everything we hoped he could be. I truly think he can be somewhere between year one, year two, Jared Verse, that kind of performance. We'll see. I could be wrong. I mentioned James was at practice in Jacksonville. He tweeted out Shade Tree Jr. That's all he said. Shade Tree Jr. So it's beautiful. Pat Payton, he is the kind of one guy that the nation is giving love to. I've seen him anywhere from 15 to like 25, predicted to go in the first round of the draft after this year. But he could be the least of all four when it's all said and done. It's just that talented. When you look at that front four with Pat Payton, Joshua Farmer, Gerald Jackson, and Marvin Jones Jr. And then behind them, there's a drop off, no doubt, but it is, it's minuscule. There's a drop off, but these guys will be studs, and they'll be in that position probably next year or the one after that. When you look at KJ Sampson, when you look at Daniel Lyons, Grady Kelly, Byron Turner Jr., Sione Lelohea, Tomiwa Durajaye, they're really deep. They're 6 deep at tackle with guys that you can really trust to go out there and play with. Of course, your 2 quote unquote impact players at defensive end. Same thing. They have got 2 impact players with another 4 guys back there that can really impact the game and come in. Byron Turner Jr. is a guy I forget about a lot. That dude, he's got high upside. I look at him kind of like as a Pat Payton. Look at him and his development along the lines of where a Pat Payton was maybe last year. So really expecting big things out of him. Same thing with Sampson. That electric athleticism, foot speed starting to show up with him. Daniel Lyons another year. Grady Kelly's no Braden Fisk, but we'll see. We'll see how he works out. I think we'll get a good bit of use out of him this year, but he doesn't need to be anything special. But there's just that's another thing. Just like the defensive backs, there may be 4 or 5 defensive lines out there that you might say could compete or have an argument against Florida State, but you aren't going to find many. That's the glory of having first-round talents out there, and they've continued to do it. You can argue the sustainability and what's going to happen next year because they didn't get all these 5 stars in the 23 class. They continue to do it, and I'm here for it.